Okay, got it. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you might be. My name is Chris, and I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date is November the 23rd of 1993. Now, I've stated that I'm an alcoholic, and I hate to be alone. Do we have any other alcoholics in the meeting today? All right. I love it. Good. We're going to acknowledge God's presence with a moment of silence. I'll follow that with a set-aside prayer. Lord, help me set aside everything I think I know about you, everything that I think I know about myself, everything that I think I know about my fellows, everything I think I know about my own recovery, for a much needed new experience in you, myself, and my fellows, and a new experience in my own recovery. Please help me to see the truth. Amen. 1058 Threads of Recovery continues to offer virtual workshops 5 days a week. To be included in our weekly email, send a request to threads1058@gmail.com. This will keep you up to date on our workshops. Our group follows the 12 traditions. We stick to our singleness of purpose, and we ask everyone to please refrain from the use of profanity when sharing. The 7th tradition states that Alcoholics Anonymous is self-supporting through their own contributions. The contributions help to cover the group's expenses, but the 7th tradition is more than simply paying for rent and other group expenses. It is both a privilege and a responsibility of individual groups and members to ensure that our organization, at every level, remains forever self-supporting and free of outside influences that might divert us from our primary purpose. The monetary amount of each contribution is secondary to the spiritual connection that joins us in unity with AA groups around the world. 7th tradition contributions can be made using Venmo to @threadsofrecovery-1058. Details are in the chat. This is an open meeting. Open meetings are available to anyone interested in Alcoholics Anonymous program of recovery from alcoholism. Non-alcoholics may attend open meetings as observers. And now it is my great pleasure to introduce today's speaker, my friend and yours, Bill H.
Well, thank you, Chris. It's good to know that I have one friend anyway. My name is Bill, and I am an alcoholic, and I'm glad to see so many of you here today. Welcome to those that are here for the first time. Hopefully we won't scare you away. Welcome back. Happy birthday to all the birthdays, and it's always my obligation as well as my deep feeling that we apologize, on the one hand, for the way we sing, but we do not apologize for the feelings that come through our singing. The fact that we're not necessarily a good choir doesn't stop us from expressing our joy in your recovery. So thank you all very much. We're going to be talking about step 3 today. Step 3, the decision. One of the decisions, perhaps the biggest decision. And for those of you that have been with us for a few weeks or a few months or a couple of years now, a reminder that this is step 3 in a series that we started a couple sessions ago called 2 Magnificent Standards, Humility and Responsibility. Those are the 2 magnificent standards we're using as part of our lens to examine the 12 steps in this series. 2 magnificent standards, humility and responsibility, along with 7 attributes that come when we work these 12 steps and produce, experience, begin to live in our spiritual awakening. If you hear drilling and hammering in the background, it is not your memory of a hangover. We have a young man working next door doing some contracting work. It is real. The sound of drilling and hammering that you may hear today is real. Do not think it's part of your memory fantasy. On the other hand, if you're like Noel and just got here from the dentist chair, perhaps the drilling and hammering you're hearing is an echo of your recent 2 hours. So in any event, I just want you to know most of you are not having an illusion. I can't speak for everyone, of course. This is a Threads of Recovery Big Book study. And you might say, where in the world does this notion of 2 magnificent standards, humility and responsibility, come from? Bill W. made a speech at the General Service Convention in 1965. that included this paragraph, and I quote, and Bill said, as we know, all AA progress can be reckoned in terms of just two words, humility and responsibility. He said our whole spiritual development can be accurately measured by our degree of adherence to these two magnificent standards. Ever-deepening humility, accompanied by an ever greater willingness to accept and act upon our clear-cut obligations. These are truly our touchstones for all growth in the life of the Spirit. They hold up to us the very essence of right being and right doing. It is by them that we are enabled to find and to do God's will. So I would suggest to you, and what we're looking at, one of the ways to look at the 12 steps that we're doing in this particular workshop, I would suggest to you that steps 1 through 6 produce enough humility, at least they did in me. They produce enough humility for us to try to fulfill our real purpose, which we will discover following step 7 as we go into step 8 and 9 on page 77 in the big book. We get enough humility to help us try to fulfill our real purpose, which is, quote, to fit ourselves to be of maximum service to God and the people about us. We also can find in the A&A 12 and 12, Alcoholics Anonymous, 12 Steps, 12 Traditions, this definition of humility on page 72 in the 12 and 12. That basic ingredient of all humility, a desire to seek and do God's will. Well, that's pretty simple. It's not bragging about my humility to admit to you today that I have a real desire to seek and do God's will. I really do. And to that extent, I have humility. Talking about humility is not bragging about it when I put it in that context. Also on page 76 of the AA 12 and 12, humility. What is it? To move out from ourselves toward others and toward God. So we need not be ashamed or embarrassed or self-conscious about talking about humility when we understand what it means in the context of recovery. What about responsibility? Well, I would suggest our responsibility grows in steps 7 through 12. We become responsible to share our spiritual awakening with other alcoholics, as well as trying to practice the principles, the 12-step principles. We become responsible to try to practice these principles in all our affairs. And at that same General Service Conference in 1965, one of the trustees, a fellow by the name of Al S., gave these remarks. I am responsible, he said. When anyone, anywhere, reaches out for help, I want the hand of AA always to be there. And for that, I am responsible. I would sum it up this way. Our recovery depends upon our personal growth in humility with God's help. Our recovery depends upon our willingness to act responsibly with God's help. So in this study, what we've been trying to do, we try to see how these two magnificent standards, as Bill called them, how they tie in with 7 attributes that come out of our 12 steps. Personality change sufficient to bring about recovery is how our spiritual awakening is defined in Appendix 2 on page 567. And what are the 7 attributes? Well, we're dealing with honesty first off. Honesty grows in us in steps 1, 2, and 3. We're going to talk about honesty and humility in step 3 today. And of course, honesty will continue forward as we go into and through the rest of the steps. Another attribute is forgiveness. Believe it or not, we're going to start talking about forgiveness next week in steps 4 and 5. Yes, forgiveness shows up in step 4 and 5. Little did I know. Trust. We're talking about trust in step 6 and 7. Trust grows in us and continues forward. Consideration toward others, grows in us in steps 8 and 9 and continues forward. Love and tolerance. Love and tolerance is our code. We're going to run into that in step 10. We actually run into it before that. It's just not called the code yet. Love and tolerance grows in us in steps 10 and 11. That continues forward into step 12, which of course is about service. Service grows in us by the time we get to step 12 and obviously continues forward in our spiritual awakening. So, step 3. Now, I will tell you, I understood step 1 when I got here pretty quickly. Just didn't like it. Didn't want anything to do with it. But I did understand you people were telling me I was powerless over alcohol, and that because I denied that I was powerless over alcohol, my life kept becoming more and more unmanageable. I understood that pretty quickly. Just didn't like it. Didn't want anything to do with it. I actually understood step 2 pretty quickly because you made it clear to me pretty early on that step 2 wasn't so much about God. It was about me not being God. Well, I kind of knew that, but I really didn't care for your rather abrupt behavior of just pointing it out to me so soon. I mean, I thought maybe you could have eased me into it a little bit, but no, almost from the get-go, you said, there is a God and you're not it. People like that were in my meetings, and they said that stuff out loud in front of me. They actually got right in my face. There is a God and you're not it, and that's where your step 2 begins. I understood that. Didn't like it. Didn't want anything to do with it. Here's the funny thing. I understood step 1 pretty quickly. I understood step 2 pretty quickly. Didn't want anything to do with it. I did not understand step 3 right away, and I thought I did. And that's one of the great mistakes I made. I would like to say early in my recovery, I got sober the 18th of March, 1981. It took me a long time in recovery, and by that I mean more than 3 weeks. It took me months, years, before I got over my fundamental misunderstanding about step 3. And the first 60 pages of the big book made it pretty clear. I know today, now watch this, if you're new or if you're not new. If the big book says something, and I don't understand it, or do understand it but don't agree with it, or sort of understand it enough to not want to agree with it, I need to slow down, talk to my sponsor, talk to some other trusted spiritual friend, and help me work through that notion. Because I have found out everything in the big book, for me, my experience is this, truly. Everything in the big book about me and my alcoholism is true. It really is. You think about the first 60 pages, plus the 30 or so pages before that, the forwards to the first, second, third, and fourth edition, the preface, the doctor's opinion. By the time we get to the page number 60, the so-called ABCs, following how it works, we're already 90 pages of information into the book. And I know today the first 60, 70, 80, 90 pages of the big book provide all the information I need to honestly admit my powerlessness. That's where my honesty began. My honesty and my humility began in step 1. I'm powerless over alcohol, the physical allergy, and the mental condition that says you can take 2 or 3 and get away with it. I'm powerless over that whole thing. And my life becomes unmanageable when I forget that I'm powerless. I also humbly come to believe in step 2 that I do need help from a power greater than myself. Help to restore my sanity, beginning with making a sane choice when it comes to the first drink. Sanity begins, for me, when I become willing and able to make a sane choice, which is don't take the first drink. I hope we're all clear on that today, whether you're new, whether you've been around for a while. Don't take the first drink is a sane choice. So you see, I get to step 3. They say, well, you're going to make this big decision. I come to find out I've been making decisions way back in step 1. First decision I made was to come to my first meeting. That was tough enough. Really tough decision. Come back to the second meeting. After what I heard at the first meeting, I went back anyway. But I make a decision. I got up this morning and said, God, help me not take a drink today. My name is Bill. I am an alcoholic. I thought I was an alcoholic. My name is Bill. I'm an alcoholic. Please help me not take a drink today. That's my first prayer. That's a sane choice. Not only to not take the first drink, but to ask for help. To ask for help to not take the first drink. Asking for help with anything today turns out to be a sane choice. We'll come back to that. So we read the ABCs on page 60, which you've been in meetings. You've heard first 2.5 pages of how it works, chapter 5, read many, many times. I mean, this is so alcoholic, and it is so writing to the alcoholic. Look at this. You get to the ABCs. A is real simple. We were alcoholic, could not manage our own lives. B, probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism. C, God and could if he were sought. God could and would if he were sought. That's where we usually stop in the meeting. But let's read on for just a moment. The very next paragraph says, and I quote, page 60, bottom half of the page, Big Book, Alcoholics Anonymous, all 4 editions, being convinced. I look around the room. Is anybody else convinced? I mean, am I really convinced of the truth of those simple 3 ABCs? Anyway, I want to fit in. I want to go along. I want to make you think I'm fitting in and going along. So I'll just be quiet and I'll nod. I'll pretend that I'm convinced, even though there may be a lurking notion of suspicion. Being convinced, we were at step 3. What? Hell, 1 and 2 have just barely snuck up on me. I'm 90 pages into the book with all this repeated information about powerless and unmanageability and don't want a higher power, want to do things my way. If people would behave, I'd be fine. All the being convinced we were at step 3? Whoa, aren't we going a little fast here? What's a big hurry? I'd like to wallow in the mystery of 1 and 2 a little longer. Because why? Because 1 and 2 are just information. Other than making a choice to believe what I'm being told or pretend to believe, I don't have to do anything else except don't take the first drink, go to meetings, and enjoy the ice cream and the fellowship. Oh, it is so easy to coast in the Never Land to step 1 and 2 for days, weeks, months. I know people that have coasted, ridden along on the tail of the AA kite in the Never Land to step 1 and 2. But that's not what the book says. Page 60, being convinced. Look around. Everybody else is leaning in. They're going forward. Being convinced of what? We were at step 3, which means, he says, what is step 3? It's right here on page 60. We decided. There it is, black and white. Step 3, we decided to turn our will and our life over to the care of God as we understood him. It does not say we turned our will and our life over to the care of God as we understood him. I repeat, it does not say we turned our will and our life over to the care of God as we understood. It said we decided to. Now let me translate alcoholic ease to you. We decided to means I don't know how. Someone's going to have to teach me to implement my decision. Being me, coming here as a know-it-all, knowing I didn't know it all, but still really important that you think I know it all, I shrugged my shoulders and said, well, yeah, I'm going to turn my will and my life over to the care of God that I don't understand, that I don't care for, that is barely in my life, and I just as soon not be there at all. But yeah, I'll turn my will and my life over. Can we move on? That's not what page 60 says. And I want to explain to you in the next 30 minutes why it is so important to get this right and how dangerous it is to get it wrong. Being convinced, we were at step 3, which is that we decided to turn our will and our life over to God as we understood him. Then Bill says these 2 questions. Just what do we mean by that? Question 1. And just what do we do? Question 2. Now, this is so alcoholic, as I said. We have just had 90 pages to convince us of the truth in our life of step 1 and step 2. That he knows who he's writing to. So he's going to take 2.5 more pages, even after he said we're convinced, and he's going to convince us one more time. Oh, this is so alcoholic. Repetition, repetition. I see a couple of Al-Anons nodding. I'm glad the Al-Anons can relate to a little repetition, a little more repetition, a little more repetition. Since we still may not be convinced, our book answers these 2 questions again, and that's what pages bottom of 60 all the way over to the top of page 63 are about. They're 3 of the most important pages in the big book. Because if we don't really swallow the truth, whether you like it or not, if we don't really use these 3 pages, 61, 62, bottom of 60, top of 63, to become convinced enough of the truth, the undeniable, unavoidable truth of step 1 and step 2 in my life, the decision I make in step 3 will be trivial, casual, and will not lead me onto the right path going into step 4. Talk about honesty and humility. They really come together for me in step 3. Understanding and accepting the answers in the book to these 2 questions. Just what do we mean by that? Step 3, being convinced. And what do we do with that? Understanding this is critical to my step 3 decision, which is what? My honest and humble decision to learn how to seek the help I need. Step 3 is a decision to learn how to turn my will and my life over to the care of God. Because whether I tell myself I do or not, whether I tell you I do or not, the truth is I don't have the first idea what it means for me to turn my will and my life over to the care of God. Decision in step 3 is a decision to learn how to do that. It is not a decision to do it. I missed that for a long time. I kept walking around after 2 or 3 inventories, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, thinking with what's left of the keen alcoholic brain. I know how to turn my will and my life over to the care of God. No, you don't. No, you don't. I go back to our great promise on page 164. We're going to turn the page and start drilling down into step 3. But remember our little promise on page 164. We realize we know only a little. Oh, please embrace that with me today. Please accept that as an opportunity, not a curse. We realize we know only a little is a great blessing, my friends. Get over know-it-all. It'll kill you. It damn near killed me. We realize we know only a little. God will constantly disclose more to you and to us. So let's enter into a little disclosure. Remember, I'm Bill. I'm an alcoholic. God was in my life my first 15 years. Then I got a girlfriend, got a car, got a back seat. This is arithmetic. Girlfriend plus car plus back seat equals less God. There's no room for God in that equation, so I started drifting away. Kind of like Mae West. Mae used to say, I used to be pure as the new fallen snow, but then I drifted. Mae's a great spiritual leader in my life. I was on top of the world, 18 years old, graduated from high school, top 10% of my class, full scholarship, nice girlfriend, nice car, nice part-time job, and then I took a drink. And everything I thought was great got better. And I spent the next 21 years chasing that feeling of those first 3 drinks. Short story, 21 years of selfish living, 21 years of more and more harmful living, 21 years of more dangerous living, danger to me and others, 2 divorces, countless missed opportunities, countless lost opportunities, time in prison, workaholic, drank at home, stopped getting caught. My only moral code when I got here was if I don't get caught, it must be okay. My only moral code when I got here, my honesty. If I don't get caught, it must be okay. I became a functional alcoholic, and when I got to AA in 1981, I was stumbling over my misconceptions that I did not know were misconceptions at the time, and I was stumbling over my misguided certainties. All the things I was sure of when I got here. I look back at them today, scares me to death what I thought I was sure of. Of course, I look back 3 years ago, it scares me to death what I thought I was sure of 3 years ago. I can still stumble over misconceptions and misguided certainties. 3 months in AA, March 18th, I got sober. Got a book, got a sponsor, worked the steps, came to step 3 the first time, went right past it. I did not know how to turn my will and my life over to God. I didn't know it. I thought I knew how. Talk about self-will. Self-will run riot in so-called recovery. So the first thing for me in step 3 is to stop thinking I have the answer. The first thing for me in step 3 is to stop thinking I have the answer. Even if I know I have the answer, I still need to stop and say, I may not have the answer. I better run this by somebody else. The first decision I make in step 3, and you'll see this play out here in a little bit. Even when I think I have the answer, I have to pause and say, I may not have the answer. The word understanding is in step 3. God as we understand Him. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes. But I want to point out a big difference. Understanding needs to have an open mind. Understanding what step 3 is becomes very important. Understanding what step 3 is not. Understanding what step 3 is not is even more important in the beginning. For me to understand step 3, I need to accept what it is not, and it is not a quick fix. It is not let go and let God. It scares me to death, and I remember how many times I said in step 3 discussions, oh, I let go and let God, as if I know what the hell that means, much less do. Let go may happen by step 6. Let God may really begin by step 7, but let go and let God are at least step 6 and 7 in a big way. I need not fool myself to think that step 3 is let go and let God. If I want the maximum benefit of Alcoholics Anonymous, which is, after all, the spiritual awakening promised in step 12, if I want the maximum benefit Alcoholics Anonymous 12 steps have to offer, I need to do the steps the way the book explains them. And the maximum benefit is going to be physical. It's going to be mental. It's going to be emotional. And first and foremost, particularly as we'll see in step 4 next week, it's going to be spiritual. In fact, if I don't treat the spiritual with some honesty and humility, I'll not get to the physical, the mental, or the emotional. Here's what I know today about step 3. And actually, Ann Smith, Dr. Bob's wife, is the one that taught us this. She led the morning meditation during the summer of 1935 when Bill stayed with Bob after Bob got sober. And it's in her diary. We thank Al-Anon and Ann Smith for this very fundamental concept, God as I understanding. Here is the way Ann worded it in her diary many, 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 many days during that summer. I surrender as much of myself as I understand today to as much of the God as I understand today. I surrender as much of myself as I understand today to as much of God as I understand today. Notice the word today. This is not a once and for all deal. This is not a one and done. This is wash, rinse, repeat. Wash, rinse. You guys have a washer and dryer at the Sis house up there in Indianapolis? Do they have a washer and dryer up there at the Sis house? Wash, rinse, repeat. Just saying. Thank Ann Smith for that. Another observation. My spiritual awakening is not, maybe yours is, my spiritual awakening has not been and is not a smooth, flawless journey. It's full of daily detours, trips, stumbles. I continue to come to believe, to seek God's help more and more and more. We're going to get into using step 2 in step 3. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves. Came to believe. Remember, came to believe is in step 2. Believe is the verb. In Alcoholics Anonymous, believe is the verb. Faith is the noun. Step 3 is a faith step. Particularly when I was new, and it's still a faith step today, but particularly when I was new. In step 2, I came to believe God was working in your life. First and foremost, I didn't believe it for me, but I did see it working in you as I hung around AA. And I borrowed your hope. You know, if God's working in your life, maybe God will work in my life. And that's kind of the second phase of my step 2 experience, coming to believe. Finally, after a while, particularly after making the third step decision and going into 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, I did decide that maybe step 3 really was true for me. So I came to believe the truth of step 2 by working 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, making the decision to do so in step 3, because that's what step 3 is. Step 3 is a decision to learn how to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understood Him. Another way of saying that is step 3 is a decision to work steps 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's all it is, and that's everything it is. Made a decision to learn how to work 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, which will lead me through a process of turning my will and my life over to the care of God as I understood Him, and I don't even have to know what's happening. I read the other day, fear knocked at the door. Faith answered. No one was there. That's goofy. Until it's true. Faith is my commitment. Step 3 is a faith step. We're going to see this unfold here shortly. Faith is my commitment without knowing what's going to happen. By definition, faith is stepping out into the unknown. If I know what's going to happen, it's not faith. By definition, faith is stepping into the unknown. So what's important is not the strength of my faith. What's important, the strength of what my faith is in. And this is how the God of our understanding grows stronger in our life. We start to trust God a little bit with a little bit. Don't have to know you're doing it. That's just what human beings do. We're going to trust God a little bit with a little bit, because that's all the risk. That's all the unknown. That's all the uncertainty we can handle. And lo and behold, something good happens. So I'm going to come back and trust a little bit more God with a little bit more of me. and I'm going to come back, and for something else good happens, I'm going to trust a little bit more God, a little bit more of me. I don't know that's happening in meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't know that's happening during the fellowship and the ice cream, but I'm trusting a little bit more of me with a little bit more of God, and good things happen. I step out in faith, my trust grows, and I step out in more faith. Because my faith in the God of my new understanding, or the new God of my understanding, or the new God of my new understanding, continues to do things that are good for me, even things I didn't know would be good for me. Faith is commitment to step out into the unknown without knowing what's going to happen. Whether the object of my faith is going to meet my expectations. Once again, faith is the noun, believe is the verb. What nourishes my faith? Hope. First sentence in the big book. We're about 100 men and women who have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. How do we recover? In hope. Hope nourishes my faith. If I didn't have hope of what has already happened, I wouldn't step out in more faith tomorrow. That's why we never graduate. There's always the unknown. There's always the uncertain. There's always new life ahead of us that we didn't expect. Please do not confuse understanding with faith. Do not confuse understanding with faith. They're not the same thing. Faith in God. Faith in the God of my understanding. Faith in the power greater than me. Forces me to not understand that. And it is a faith that helps me deal with the fear of the unknown. That's why when fear knocks at the door and faith answers, there's no one there. If I answer alone without faith, I guarantee you fear is still there. So let's go back to our two questions. Page 2, if you're waiting for me to get back on the outline. Sometimes these bonus detours just happen. You don't know they're going to happen, and neither do I. Alcoholics Anonymous, pages 60 to 63. Let's look at that first question he asked us. Just what do we mean by that? By the way, this is an honesty exercise. He's checking one more time before we make this big decision. Going to go through these pretty quickly. On page 60, what do we mean by that? Well, we need to be convinced that any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. That's on page 60. We're going to do this like this. I've got about 7 or 8 questions here. They're statements from pages 60, 61, and 62. I'm going to turn them into question. It's a pre-step 3 mini inventory. I'm going to ask the question. I'm going to give you 6 or 7 seconds just to answer it for your own self today. You don't have to tell us what your answer is, but we'll do a quick little mini, kind of a ramp up to the big decision in step 3. In case we aren't convinced yet. It's only been 90 pages. Victor got it. So, are we convinced? And by the way, you've been in a few AA meetings by now. You've heard some other stories, not just your own. You come to realize I may not be the only one that was self-will run riot. In fact, I've heard some of your stories. My self-will doesn't sound so bad after all. I've heard about some of your spouses. My spouse isn't so bad after all, come to think. But I don't compare. I'm beyond that, Chris. I don't compare anymore. Just made poor Mike break his neck. He turned his head so fast. Look at page 60. I've been tap dancing here, letting you find page 60. Are you convinced that any life run on self-will can hardly be a success? And we don't just mean success with not drinking. Have friends, have a job, have your kids talk to you, have the dog quit peeing on your lap. Lots of different measures of success. Another question on, are we almost always in collision? We feel like we're in collision with something or somebody. You feel like an actor who's trying to run the whole show? page 61. If only people would do as he wished. And my translation of that, if they would just only behave, which means do as I wish. And then, of course, the cousin of that, other people are more to blame. They're more to blame because they won't do as I wish. Just think about that for 7 or 8 seconds. Page 61, are we a self-seeker? Are we always seeking our way? Can't even open my mind to see another way? And then on page 61, we're getting real close to the bone here. A victim. Big Book says I'm a victim. Not of them. Notice this, folks. I'm a victim of the delusion. My delusion. I'm a victim of self-delusion, according to page 61, that my satisfaction and happiness can be squeezed out of life if only I manage well. If only I manage well, which means whip all you people into line. By the way, do you see why we have traditions in AA? The traditions in AA basically treat page 61 for all of us. But we'll talk about that another day. And then here comes the hammer. Our actor, me, I'm beginning to see he's talking about me here. Our actor is self-centered, egocentric, making a nod to Mr. Freud, Dr. Freud, Professor Freud, misguided Freud. Freud. And then finally on page 62, look at the top of your page. I know it's in your book too. I'm going to count it down. 1, 2, 3, 4. The 6th line down, the first full paragraph on page 62. If you don't already have it written in your margin, please write diagnosis. It's already there, Nan. Thank you very much. Now, Chris, you're showing off. But I love to see you show off. It's so sweet. Edible. Selfishness, self-centeredness. He puts self-centeredness in case I don't know what selfishness means. Isn't he wonderful? Exclamation point. That we think is the root of our trouble. The root may be under the ground. You may not be able to see the root, but it's from which everything else grows. We're not talking about alcohol anymore, folks. We're going to find out in a couple of pages early in step 4, liquor was but a symptom. It's going to be about 2 pages from now. Here's your diagnosis. Step 3 is really important if we're talking about selfishness, self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our trouble. And then he says this right in the middle of page 62. Right in the middle of page 62, above everything, we alcoholics must be rid of this selfishness. There's a must. Oh, here comes another one. We must, or it kills us. Let's just rest there a minute. Let's just take a little pause and consider how important it is to be convinced. This is what he's concerned that we were not convinced of. Being convinced, we were at step 3, middle of page 62, above everything. Everything. Above everything. We alcoholics must be rid of this selfishness. He does not say be rid of self. Be rid of self will run riot. Be rid of unguided, unlimited self. Be rid of the need and the desire and the compulsion and the obsession to control everything and everybody about us. One more time. We alcoholics must be rid of this selfishness. we muster, it kills us. By the way, that's in the present tense. When I read that today, it's in the present tense. I must be rid of this selfishness today, which has nothing to do with how long it's been since I had a drink, except since I have not had a drink, I've also been trying to work the program, the 12 Steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. My selfishness is less a problem than it used to be because I'm accepting guidance for it, because I have learned how to turn my will and my life over to the care of God. But if you really read page 62, and if you really take it personally, and particularly if you're new in your first year or so of recovery, and if you haven't done this yet, I really want you to do this today. Read the middle of page 62 and say, good God, I really do need help. Because my selfishness tells me I'm not selfish. There are some of you on here right now. Your selfishness is saying, geez, I'm glad I'm not as bad as that bird Bill. My God, if I was as bad as he was, I'd go to God for help too. I'm glad I'm not that bad. Your selfishness is lying to you. You may wonder how I know that, because my selfishness lies to me on a daily basis. My selfishness doesn't want help from God or Andrea or anybody else. One more time, being convinced. We alcoholics must be rid of this selfishness. We muster, it kills us. Thank God the next four words are where they are. Look at the next four words on page 62. God makes that possible. There's the step 3 equation, the syllabus, the algebra. I must be rid of selfishness that I don't want to let go of. God makes it possible anyway. You see why I say I don't know how to let go and let God? Because I can't let go and let God without God's help. Every time I think I can, selfishness is taken over again. Okay. Above everything, we alcoholics must be rid of the selfishness we muster. It kills us. Second question we had back on page 60, just what do we do? My God, if I'm in that much need of help, I hope you give me something to do. Well, look at the bottom of page 62. This is the how and the why of it. One of the few times in the big book we see the word why used, and this is a biggie. Most of the time we talk about how and when. We don't worry about why. But here's a great, huge why. The how and the why of it. First of all, we had to quit playing God. Why? It didn't work. There it is. It didn't work. All that business about the actor, all that business in chapter 2 about my denying my problem, all that business in chapter 3 more about alcoholism, defying my problem after I know about it, and all that business in chapter 4, we agnostics, doubting my need for help, even after I know the truth about me in step 2 and 3. He boils it down here in 2 sentences on page 62. First of all, we had to quit playing God. That means trying to be in charge, trying to be a know-it-all, trying to run my life and everybody else's life without any help or advice. We had to quit playing God. Why? It didn't work. You don't need any more analysis, boys and girls. You don't need any more. That's what Paul said this morning. Live sober and conscious. This is part of being conscious. We had to have God's help. First of all, we had to quit playing God. It didn't work. Next, we decided. See, here's the decision leading up to the decision. You see this on the bottom of page 62? We decided God was going to be our director. Now we're starting to get into it with little baby steps. We're creeping up on the big decision on page 63 in a minute, with a decision to creep up on the big decision. When we do it the big book way, it's in bite-sized pieces. It's in little chunks we can swallow in spite of our selfishness. My selfishness Gil, you've met my friend Gil before, my evil twin. You ordered I wasn't going to bring him up today, Andrea. I promise you we'll never be here on Monday without my buddy Gil, the little turkey. Gil doesn't want any of this. Gil doesn't want anything to do with any of this. First of all, we had to quit playing God. It didn't work. Next, we decided God was going to be our director. And look at the top of page 63. We had a new employer. Please underline that, circle it, put stars around it. Debbie probably has it highlighted in magenta or something. We had a new employer. Promises of step 3 follow this. They're in the past tense. To offer hope to us. Hope is the fuel for my faith. They wrote the promises in step 3 in the past tense, so I would have some hope from what happened to them when they bought into the new employer, when they decided to go to work for the new employer. The promises of step 3 are on the top of page 63, ahead of the step 3 prayer, in the past tense, based on what others have done to overcome their seemingly hopeless state of mind and body, as my incentive package. It's like, if you go to work for the new employer, here's the benefit package. It happened for us. It can happen for you. It's as close as you're going to get to a written guarantee until you get to page 84. Well, 75. Page 75 and page 84. We had a new employer. You ever go to work for a new boss? Any fans of the Who here? In with the new boss, out with the old. Oh, good. We got some. Wonderful. I'm not going to sing it, but you can hear it. I mean, that's one of the greatest bands ever, and that's one of the greatest songs they ever made. Never mind. I'm not going there. Too late. Whoops. Bill's out in tall grass like a lost ball. Happened later than usual, but he got there. So look at the way step 3 is summarized back on page 59. Made a decision. That's all it is. It's just a choice. You don't have to know how to do anything except believe the information from step 1 and 2. Made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. This is a humble choice. I know I need help. I'm not enough by myself to live sober and to live well sober. A humble choice to learn how to turn my will and my life over to God. So, Chris, could we have someone read the step 3 prayer, God, I offer myself to thee, on page 63? Could someone read the step 3 prayer?
Debbie G., would you like to do that for us today?
With passion.
Oh, I've got passion today.
Atta girl.
We were now at step 3. Many of us said to our Maker, as we understood Him, God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always.
Thank you. God, I offer myself to thee. This is an offering. In faith, I don't know what's going to happen, but I've seen you, and I've seen something working in your life that you tell me began when you took this prayer, when you offered yourself. Good stuff that you could not always explain started to happen. This is an offering in faith, because I don't know for sure. I just know I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. I'm sick and tired of living the way I've been living. To build with me and to do with me as you will. You can read the King James, THOU. It's okay. It's in the big book. I love the King James. When I read the Bible, I still read the King James, but I like to say this as you will, but that's up to you. So what's the first thing I do here? I offer myself. It's the beginning of letting go. All recovery begins with stopping doing something before I start doing something new. Here it is again in step 3. I offer myself. It's the beginning of letting go of self-will run riot. Second, I accept that there's going to be some remodeling. Remember the word in step 2, restore? A lot of remodeling has to do with restoration. A lot of restoration has to do with remodeling. So there's going to be some remodeling. He's going to build with me, or in my case, he's going to rebuild. Turned out to be a much bigger rebuilding project than I thought. I thought we were going to have to replace a couple pieces of siding. The remodeling turned out to be much bigger than that. In fact, it's still going on. We're still finding pieces of the foundation right here in Old Bill. I need a little work there, bud. Third, I accept that there will be different priorities in my life. Do with me. I didn't understand that the first umpteen times I took step 3, but I understand it today. I share it with you today in case it might help you come to a deeper and richer understanding of how powerful, how unbelievably powerful this prayer is, and how much Bill crammed into a few sentences. Yes, he got the ideas from others, not the least of which was the Oxford group, not the least of which was Ann Smith. Remember? As much of me as I understand today, God, to as much as you as I understand today, God. A lot of Ann Smith is right here in the step 3 prayer. I make this offering, very first sentence in the step 3 prayer, which is step 3, by the way. Page 63, Big Book, Alcoholics Anonymous, the prayer is step 3. I make this offering as honestly as I can at the time of my offering. When I take the step 3 prayer today, it's a lot deeper and richer for me than it used to be. But anytime I take it, it was as good as it could be at the time. The only wrong way to do the step 3 prayer is don't do it. Look at that next sentence. Relieve me of the bondage of self. It doesn't say remove all myself. When you hear people talking about, oh, I'm going to be the hole in the donut, that's self-talking. Ignore those people. That's not what the big book says. It doesn't say you're going to lose yourself. It says you're going to become free from the bondage of self. Oh, well, that's different. Why? That I may better do God's will. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do God's will. I don't care that much in the beginning about doing God's will. I care a lot about being relieved of my self-will run riot. I care a lot about being relieved in the beginning of sick and tired of being sick and tired. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do your will, is the centerpiece of step 3. It's the summary purpose of my recovery. Beginning in step 4 and all the way to and through step 12, one day at a time up until today, I'm never not working with God to relieve me of the bondage of self. You can draw a straight line from page 63, relieve me of the bondage of self, all the way through the next steps, the page 89 and forward, step 12, carrying the message, working with others, practicing these principles in all our affairs. It all has to do with relieve me of the bondage of self so that I can better do God's will. Everything in our recovery begins with this one simple prayer. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Relief from the bondage of my dishonest, prideful, unguided self-will. I make this request as humbly as I can to God, as I understand God at the time of my request. And there's more. Take away my difficulties. I used to think the difficulties were the ones outside me. Take away my difficulties, like my former wives, or my former mothers-in-law, or my former fathers-in-law, or my boss. No, that's a misapplication. Take away my difficulties is what's inside blocking me from the sunlight of the Spirit, which we're going to run face-to-face to next week in step 4. Take away my difficulties is about what's on the inside. Because the outside is not going to change. I can't make my recovery dependent on them changing. I can't make my recovery dependent on it changing. Our stories disclose in a general way what we used to be like, not it. It doesn't change. Take away my difficulties on the inside, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help. Oh, I'm going to become an example? Newsflash, I've already been an example. I've been a bad example. I've been an example of drunken self-will run riot, and then I got in recovery. I was an example of sober self-will run riot. Some people call it dry. Anybody ever been a bad example in recovery? The rest of you aren't listening. Thank you. Thank you very much. Here's the centerpiece. Relief from the bond. Then take away my difficulties. I ask God to remove, quote unquote. Where are we going to find that again? Step 7. It's going to take 4, 5, and 6 to learn enough to be in the removal mode. More importantly, to be in the let God removal mode. Direct lines 3 to 7. Could take 4, 5, and 6 just to get me in let God remove. But I start praying for it in 3. It's okay. God's work for others to be. I can actually become helpful to others to do. So we not only have to talk the talk, we have to walk the walk. I honestly and humbly request God's help. And notice how it ends. What's God's help? What's the form? What's going to be the manifestation of God's help in my life? Step 3 answers all. God's power, God's love, God's way of life. That's another triangle. Ask for God's power, have faith in God's love, live God's way of life. The order of those is not accidental. I seek God's power. I have faith in God's love for me so that I can live in God's will, way of life. Faith is not something I produce or earn. Faith is a gift from God. And I begin my faith by borrowing your hope by seeing what you see faith is working in your life. You say this is what's working for you. And I bet on the come. I step out in faith. I have no idea if it's going to work for me. I'm a little skeptical it's working for you, but even if it's not real, you sure as hell live like it. Faith is God's gift. God is willing to give me faith when and if I ask for it. And see, that's what step 3 is. It's a offering. It's an asking. It's a plea. And it ends with this simple little prayer. May I do thy will always. May I do thy will always. That's a bada bing, bada boom, Kathy. You're going to see thy will, not mine, be done over and over and over again as we go forward in this book, as we go forward in these steps. It's right here in step 3. We didn't invent thy will not be done in step 10. It starts back here in step 3. And it's may I. It's a request. It's a plea. May I. And may, I think, has both senses here. May I in terms of gift it to me. Also, may I help me do it. May I walk through your door? Yes, you can. Let me help you. May in both senses of the term. This is the first of many times I will seek God's will, not mine be done. So what do we boil step 3 down to? Very simply this. And keep in mind, we're talking about honesty and humility in these first 3 steps. I honestly, by this time, I honestly desire to do God's will to some extent, even if it just means I don't have to drink today. We've been told over and over and over again so far in this book, any little beginning in the right direction is sufficient. Am I even willing to believe that God is there and might help me? Any little beginning is sufficient. I honestly desire to do God's will. Obviously, my desire, well, maybe it's not so obvious. My desire to do God's will today is much greater than it was 40 years ago. I really desire to do God's will today because I've had the experience in my life, and I've seen the experience with my wife, everybody else I know in recovery, or any other spiritual journey. I've seen the benefit of trying to set aside just my will and try to align my will with God's will and let God's will be superior. I really want to do God's will today, more than ever. I humbly admit that I may get to, I may be able to, both senses of the term, that I may be able to do God's will with God's help. I cannot do God's will without God's help. I can't even set aside my will without God's help. And that's where self really trips me up. Oh, I don't need help with this. I still tell myself that today about some things. Way too many things. He says near the bottom of page 63 these wonderful words. We thought well. You see what being convinced is such a big deal? This is not a trivial, superficial, shallow little prayer exercise to do around a campfire and then go home and have learned nothing. Step 3, the prayer on page 63 in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, is the first major turning point after I walked into my first meeting and stopped taking my first drink. That's how big a deal this is. And we need to help the newcomer absorb the information in those first 60, 70, 80, 90 pages, however you want to count them. We need to walk the newcomer through page 60, 61, 62, line by line. And it doesn't take 3 months to do it. It scares me when someone walks in a meeting and says, my sponsor doesn't think I'm ready for step 3. And I go up to him after the meeting and say, what are you and your sponsor doing to get ready for step 3? Don't drink and go to meetings. Get a new sponsor. Help them be convinced of the truth about themselves, not just their need, but our promise. So that when they do that step 3 prayer, God, I offer myself to you to build with me and do with me as you will. Take away, relieve me of the bondage of self that I may better do your will. Take away my difficulties on the inside, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help. Not just in AA, the whole world. Be a witness. Be a witness of God's love, God's power, and God's way of life. We thought well, bottom of page 63, we thought well before taking this step, making sure we were ready, that we could at last abandon ourselves utterly to Him. When people say they're struggling with step 3 today, I usually go up to them and say, have you made the decision? No. Have you tried to make the decision? No, not really. Then you're not struggling with step 3. You're struggling with step 1 and 2. If you've really been convinced of the truth of powerlessness and unmanageability in your life at depth, the way this book describes it, and if you have become convinced that you need help from a power greater than yourself and it's not you, that there's a God of some kind and it's not me, you won't have any trouble at all running to page 63. God, let me take step 3 now so I can find out what to do to get out of this. We don't struggle with step 3. We struggle with insufficient convincing of the truth in our life of step 1 and 2. And by the way, we're going to see this phenomenon repeated again and again, step by step. People say they're struggling with step 6. Probably not. Go back and look at 4 and 5. Doug DeBee used to say step 6 is a drunk trap for step 4 and 5. Or we're struggling with step 10. No, you're not struggling with step 10. You missed the first 9 steps. Am I sounding too critical? Am I upsetting some of you? Am I saying, oh, it shouldn't be that hard, Bill? It's not. It's Gil. Gil is the culprit here. Now, I take responsibility for Gil. He's part of my parade. His monkey is part of my circus. The big book is telling the truth. We're the ones who don't like the truth. Let's not shoot the messenger, and let's not lie to each other in the meeting, and let's not lie to each other about what the messenger is saying. The big book says what it says for a good reason. Don't add to it and don't take away from it. We thought well before taking this step, making sure we were ready, that we could at last abandon ourselves utterly to Him. Okay, we're going to do about 7 minutes of observations on humility and honesty in step 3. I'm going to read the step 3 promises when we sincerely took such a position, which is we had a new employer. Here's what happens. Being all powerful, He provided what we needed watch this, if we kept close to Him and performed His work well. How are we going to learn to get close to God? Let's just take a guess at 4, 5, 6, and 7. Performed His work well. Let's say 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. It's just a guess. We'll see how this plays out in the next session or 2. If we kept close to Him and performed His work well, we became less and less interested in ourselves. Thank God for that. Our little plans and designs. This is the top of page 63. I'm not making this up. It's in a big book. More and more we became interested in seeing what we could contribute to life. As we felt new power flow in, don't have to understand how that happens. Do you sit there and explain electricity to yourself every time you walk in a room and turn on a light switch? I hope not. Julie, don't you just go in and turn on a switch? You don't analyze electricity every time you do it. So when you feel new power flow in, don't stand there and analyze the light switch. Just say, thank you for the power. Move forward on God's will, not mine. We enjoy peace of mind. We discovered we could face life successfully. We become conscious of His presence. We began to lose our fear of today, tomorrow, and the hereafter. We were reborn. So here's some observations. Step 1 diagnoses my problem. Step 2 prescribes my solution. Step 3, I decide to honestly believe the diagnosis. Step 1, humbly learn how to implement the solution. I'm not asked to give up my self-will in step 3, but the bondage of self-will run riot. I have a new employer. I humbly learn how to work for the new boss in steps 4 through 9. I honestly continue to try to work for the new boss in step 10, 11, and 12. We'll see that unfold as we go forward in these series. Step 3 is my decision to learn how to let God provide what I need so that the new power could flow into me when I keep close to God and try to perform His work well. Believing is the key to understanding, not the other way around. Believing is the key to understanding, not the other way around. I come to believe, first mentioned in step 2. We're going to see that idea expressed again and again. We'll see it next week in step 4. I come to believe, thus developing a desire to understand. If I wait to understand God, I will never come to believe. You may wonder how I know that. I screwed up my belief. I got in the way of my faith by trying to understand God. Now think about that for a minute. Bill, the giant brain, if he works hard enough, drinks enough coffee, stays up late long enough, will understand God. Here's a newsflash. If you think you understand God, it's not God. I think Mike stayed up late with me a time or two. Once again, believing is the key to understanding, not the other way around. I come to believe, develop a desire to understand. If I wait to understand God, I will never come to believe. My healthy understanding of God, quote unquote, understanding of God, began when I came to believe there's a power greater than me, and I'm not it. Some days, that's still the best I can do with God. There's a power greater than me. I humbly accept I'm not that power. I am not God. Belief is more than mental awareness. Belief is a course of action. That's why believe is a verb in recovery. The verb in English language is the action word. Belief is more than a state of mind. It's more than mental awareness. It's a course of action, a way of life. When I admit in step 1 and come to believe in step 2, I desire and decide to learn a new way of life. And that's what step 3 is. It's a decision to learn a new way of life. It's not to have a new way of life crystallize overnight just because I stood up from my knees after step 3. It's a decision to learn how. My understanding of God grows as I honestly trust God and humbly seek God's direction and put my belief into daily action. How about that word reborn? Everybody wants to shy away from that word reborn. It's ironic that we're talking about this the Monday after Easter. It's one of the great ironies of this series. Here's what the context of reborn is in Alcoholics Anonymous, because we're not dealing with the afterlife here. You can deal with that elsewhere. We deal with the here and now in Alcoholics. We're not against the afterlife, don't get me wrong. We're not against religion. We just don't deal with it here. Reborn means God helps me hit the reset button. Keep it simple, folks. Reborn simply means God is going to help me hit the reset button, one more chance to live life well. Also, reborn in the context of step 3, it comes during those, at the end of those promises on the top half of page 63. Reborn in the context of step 3 means my spirit, whatever that is, passes into a new consciousness. Why? Number 1, I stopped drowning it in alcohol. Number 2, I asked to be relieved of the bondage of self. My spirit, the flame, is now nourished, not extinguished. Anybody light a candle during their morning quiet time today? Anybody else besides Andrea and I light a candle during your morning quiet time today? Every time I light that candle, I think of reborn. I've stopped extinguish it. I've nourished it by giving it flame, by passing along some heat, some flame, some essence, and that little wick lights up, and there's my little candle again. It's a renourishing. It's a rebirth. My spirit passes into a new consciousness. I honestly seek to be centered in God's will, not my will. I keep trying. I get there, and then I leave, and I get there, I get to God's will, then I get out of it and get back into it. My humble hope is now in God, not me. I'm not proud of that. I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful today that's my priority. I heard a member say once, our need is God's opportunity. Our need, gift of desperation, getting here in the first place. Our need is God's opportunity. Step 3 is my honest decision to humbly offer myself to God so that God can work His will, His opportunity with me, one day at a time. And finally, in step 3, I've talked about risk in step 1 and 2. Here's the risk I see in step 3. I take my third risk in the spiritual awakening of my recovery from alcoholism. I decide to learn how to humbly seek God's will, to direct my will, which after all are just my choices, my will in my life. My will are just my choices, the choices I make, with or without God's help. I humbly seek God's will to direct my will, my choices, and to honestly accept God's will in my life, which is the consequences of my choices. God helps me make my choices in recovery going forward from step 3. I do end up making better choices when I ask God to help me. And my life, the consequences of my choices, including how I deal with the consequences of your choices. But how I deal with your choices is my choice. I no longer, as we're going to see in step 4 next time, as we move into step 4 and 5 with forgiveness, is our key point. But I take a risk in step 3 because I'm going to find out how God wants me to handle this, and I don't know today, particularly if I'm new in recovery. And so once again, we go to the bottom of page 63. This was only a beginning. The information, he's summing up the entire book up to this time at the bottom of page 63. The information in 1 and 2, the decision we make in step 3 because of the information in 1 and 2. This was only a beginning. The first 3 steps, including the step 3 prayer. This was only a beginning. Though if honestly and humbly made, there's our honesty and humility right there in the first 3 steps. This was only a beginning, though if honestly and humbly made, an effect, sometimes a very great one, was felt at once. Next time, I'm going to do step 4, staying with our humility, magnificent standard, and looking at the attribute of forgiveness. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill. You want to take us out with a prayer?
Well, it seems appropriate to do step 3 one more time. And you can say it along with me or not. God, I offer myself to Thee, to build with me and to do with me as You will. Relieve me of the bondage of self, so that I may better do Your will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of Your power, Your love, and Your way of life. May I do Your will always. Amen, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill. It was wonderful, as always. And like I said before, I hope someday to do that prayer with you together here on Sanibel sometime.
Amen.
Anyway, you can, everybody can unmute and thank the speaker.
Thanks, Bill.
Powerful session, Bill.
Thanks so much, Bill.
Thank you, Bill.
I will.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you so much, Bill. Thank you, Bill.
Top-notch job,
That was
William.
awesome. I learned so much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bill.
Great job, Bill. Thank you.
Does anybody wonder what Mona Lisa has to do with step 3? I thought for years the woman looks like she's stuck, doesn't know what choice to make. It looks to me like a person stuck between step 1 and 2. I was hoping bringing Mona Lisa with us today would help her get off the dime, help her decide to move forward and seek God's will, not hers. So I brought her along just to see.
It's like somebody asked her and she's like, I don't know.
Exactly.
So she'll get her smile if she moves on?
Just hang on for 2 minutes.
Her smile may become less enigmatic, but we'd have to ask Leonardo about that.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Hey, Debbie.
Okay. We will now open the floor for a few minutes for sharing. Please keep your share short and concise to give everyone a chance. And please keep it relevant to the disease of alcoholism and the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. No outside issues, please. Raise your hand if you'd like to share and I'll call on you. The floor is now open for sharing. Teresa.
Thanks, Chris. Thank you, Bill. You opened up a thought to me that I had erroneously believed in. I believed that I had to work on faith to be able to get to God. And you're telling me it's the opposite. Can you make that more clear to me?
You're muted, Bill.
I probably can't make it more clear, but I'll try. By definition, faith is in the unknown. It's in the uncertain. It's in the unproven. If I already know it, it's not faith. When I say I'm working on faith, this is speaking for myself. That's why I can't really tell anybody else for sure how to deal with their faith. I can tell you my struggle. When I am working on my faith, I'm probably in the way of receiving faith from God. And it's one of those, it's perhaps the single most unexplainable feature of all the unexplainable stuff of the spiritual awakening. Keep in mind, we're trying to explain the unexplainable here. The spiritual awakening, by definition, because it's a gift from God, is not going to be fully understood by us. And my self-will, my desire to understand so I can explain, so I can feel like I'm in control, my self-will is so strong, it sabotages me all the time. The best thing I've learned to do to experience faith is stop trying to have faith and just accept the truth of what's around me. I think one of the things that is the most powerful about the serenity prayer, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. To accept the things I cannot change includes my inability to understand faith. It's one of these backward sounding ideas in recovery. When I stop trying to have faith and just experience what's going on around me, I end up with more faith. That's why we have to come to believe and then let the understanding come after that. If I try to understand to believe, I will never believe. Gotta let go. So stay tuned for the next 6 steps.
Okay.
The manifestation of the truth of step 3 comes in step 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. The manifestation of the truth of step 3, the faith promised, the faith sought for in the step 3 prayer comes to pass in step 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And I don't have to know it for it to happen. So stay tuned, Teresa. Stay tuned.
Thank you, Bill. As always.
All right. Next up, we have Satish.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. I'm Satish. I'm an alcoholic. Thank you, Bill.
Bonsoir.
Thank you for
Bonsoir.
this marvelous, bonsoir, for this marvelous exposé on this step 3. In my French, I have the French version of this big book. And when it is said about reborn,